Well, hello, and welcome to the My Wool Mitten podcast. My podcast about life on a farm in the middle of the Mitten, Michigan's Lower Peninsula, where I live with my husband, and we have a small flock of sheep that we raise for fiber, mostly, and a retired barn cat, a couple of old laying hens, our horse Kyle, and our kids and family close around us. You've found me today in January, and this is part one of 3 parts of this episode of the podcast, the first episode for 2020, for January 2020, that I'm calling Carryover, because a good bit of it is projects that have been brought forward from last year into this year. I put out just a brief introduction to let you know that I was recording this and it was getting a little bit long, and so that was what made me decide to split it into 3 parts. Not so much for you to watch all at once and not so much for me to upload all at once. So this is going to be the spinning portion of the episode. And I'm going to talk to you about my plans to spin what I have in my stash and knit from that and how I got started with that. Now, I had started to record for this back in December of last year, when I first started spinning for this project. And so that was some pretty good footage with some details about the main project that I'm working on right now. And so I'm going to include that at the end of this episode, not waste that footage, but I will explain it to you a little bit. It should make sense. It's just that it was recorded in December. So in that clip, I talked to you about my desire to stash down, as many of us do at the end, decide to do at the end of a year, beginning of a new year. And I had already started to do that with yarn. And I had found new homes for quite a bit of yarn. And I was cleaning house, as one does before the holidays. And what I found was I'm looking over here at a pile of my fiber stash. But what I did is went through and found the spinning fibers that I had. And I have 3 or 4 lots. Let's see, I have it written down here so I don't forget to tell you guys. I have 3 lots that are about 2 pounds each of roving. And my plan is to spin those throughout the coming year into a sweaters quantity or a shawl quantity for myself. And those are going to be ongoing spins. I actually started in December for that. Those are going to be ongoing spins until I make it through that particular lot of fiber. And I think that, that should probably take me through the year, taking my time spinning for it. But I also had several little bundles of smaller amounts of fiber, all under 8 ounces, but all more than 2. So between 2 and 8 ounces of different fibers from different farms, from different workshops or classes I may have taken, or swaps I may have participated in. And most of them are different than what I raised myself. And it just so happened, I put them all together. I weighed them to see how much was in each little bit. And I have 24 of those. Actually, there was 25, but I gave one little bundle of that away. So 24 little small bits of fiber. And I thought, now I could spin 2 of those a month and be done at the end of the year spinning and using up that fiber that I have. Some of it was really special and I've kind of put it aside. Some of it I'm not sure why I got, if I even still want to use it. But anyway, so I have those all, and I went through them, made sure there was no signs of moth activity. Some of them were a little bit musty from being stored, so I repackaged them, put them into paper bags, baskets, or wooden boxes, and then I numbered them all. So they all have their little card with a description of what they are, and those are all numbered 1 through 24. And then I took a little cards and made little numbers 1 through 24. I put them in this little bag, which is a little muslin bag that it just so happens that my mom had made for me. And then I'm reaching in and drawing out a number, and that's what I'm spinning. So it's kind of like a little surprise package for myself. And I'm I'm really looking forward to the idea of that plan. Probably most of the smaller amounts will be spun on my electric wheel, the butterfly spinner, because the big Luette wheel is being taken up with the sweater spin that I'm doing right now. I'm spinning some bulky yarn, and that just works better on the Luette wheel to do that. So that's kind of used up for the big spin right now, and then the butterfly spinner, I have several bobbins for that. They're smaller bobbins. They're actually Ashford spinning wheel bobbins, so they completely full hold about an ounce and a quarter. So that's what I'm doing there. So what do you think about that idea? I had already decided to do that. I had already made that plan and was going to talk to you about it in this podcast, when then again back in January, my friend Fran from the Wool at Hearted podcast and Instagram account talked about doing a stash down together make along, kind of for the same reason, consolidating, using precious fibers and yarns and things that we have. And so I thought, well, this goes right along with that. So I had already planned this just to do on my own, but now I'm participating with Fran. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about Fran in a minute. So yeah, I got started with that, and I think it's going to be fun. The three bigger amounts that I told you I have, the 2-pound amounts, those are all from our own roving. And we don't produce roving anymore, so or very rarely, because we mostly sell the fiber raw. And so that's going to be kind of fun to spin that up. Let me tell you right now a little bit, and this is going to pertain to what you're going to see at the end. The fiber that I started with was the Midnight Dances roving. That was the black with some teal blue and some milkweed fiber in it that I think I know I talk about in this portion coming up. But I decided that I wanted to spin that bulky. It doesn't draft really well, and so I just thought it would be nice to spin it up bulky and make something with it. I already have a shawl made from it, and I'd always wanted to make Elizabeth Zimmerman's Wishbone sweater or Hurry Up Last Minute sweater. It's the December project in the Knitter's Almanac, if you have that. And so I'm not going to talk about it too much because I've got the footage at the end, but I did want to show you just a few skeins that I have spun up here. I think I have now a total of 8 skeins. They're all between 50 and 60 yards. They're a 2-ply bulky weight. And so and I had done a swatch, a sleeve swatch. I talk about that too. And so I know that it's going to work for my gauge. So that's one thing that's been kind of ongoing. Now, then I also want to show you that I did at the first of the year do my first number draw for my first little stash down spin. And the first one that I drew was this interesting roving that I believe I got in a class that I took, and it might have been spinning other than wool. It was, there was wool in this roving, but it also had, I'm reading the card, dyed tencel, cotton, silk, soy silk, silk latte, and bamboo. And this was a little over 2 ounces that I spun. And it is black, even though it's got the colors. I'm not sure how well that will show here. But here's the skein spun up, and I'll put a few pictures in as well. And I just did a 2-ply, and it actually was quite fun to spin. There is a little bit of glitz in there, but not a lot. It's not too terrible. And this is actually going to be part of a gift for someone. It was already planned out. I just haven't sent it off yet. So that was my first spin, and that was the one I did first. So I finished that, and I drew for my second spin, and I don't have that here, but I do have some pictures I'll insert. Excuse me. The second spin was a Cordell Roving, but not mine. It was from my friend and sheep mentor Rita, and it was a it was a swirl, two-way swirl, natural gray roving, and an over-dyed, kind of a teal, not teal, more of a turquoise color. And by itself, when you spun it, the turquoise really took over, so it just looked like a turquoise yarn. And I wasn't that crazy about that. And I think I had 4 ounces to begin with, excuse me, but I'd used some of it, and so I had a little over 2 ounces left. And I've paired it with a couple of other small bits of yarn, and so I'll show those to you and talk more about those maybe next time, but I will show you a picture of that in progress. And I have a knitting project already in mind for that. So that's what I've got going on there. Like I said, looking forward to using those things up and participating with Fran. Now, if you don't know about Fran and the Woolen Hearted podcast, it's here on YouTube. She also has an Instagram account and now a Ravelry group. And she's a very dear, gentle soul. And I want to tell you that Fran and I have known each other for quite a few years now. How many do you think, Fran? Maybe since 2016, I want to say. We met, we were both part of the Bee Mandarines podcast group, which is Melody Hoffman. And Melody, for a time, organized swaps so that people could get to swap with someone from some distance away. Fibers, yarns, that kind of thing. And Fran and I were paired in the first swap that she did for that. And so we visited back and forth, and I think we really hit it off. At least I really enjoyed the conversations. And so I'm going to show you some of the things that I got from Fran because I still have some of it. Now, some, of course, I used right away. There were some sweets and a delicious herbal tea, delicious and beautiful. There was some raw fiber, and this was back when they lived still in the Pyrenees. Am I saying that right, Fran? And I have the beautiful letter that she sent to me from there, explaining the different things. And one little thing that I'll show you, this was, it'll crinkle a little bit, I'm afraid. It's going to blow out a little too much if I hold it back here. Anyway, it's a little sheep soap, and this was locally produced, and it has sheep's milk and lanolin in it, and probably it was really a shame not to use such a wonderful little soap, but it makes such a beautiful ornament. It normally sits right up here with some of my other sheep things and makes me think of Fran. And then the other thing is, she sent me some yarn and some natural fibers, and I'm probably saying this wrong. It looks like bourgeois to me, but it's Baregeoise, sheep. And she sent me some spun yarn from that, and I made a pair of fingerless mitts from it. Well, I pulled them out, and there's only one mitt in there. I don't know where the other one is. I hope I can find it. Slip this on and show you, because there's a little bit of the yarn left, but not enough to make a whole another pair, I don't believe. But it's such a squishy and warm, creamy color. A little pattern on there that I just kind of made up, and I just love it. So I'm hoping I find the other one. But so that was how I first got to know Fran. And so then when I started on Instagram and came across her somehow or the other, or maybe she discovered me, I was thrilled. But if you can go and follow her account, it's very creative, it's very considerate and sensitive and gentle and thoughtful and inspiring. And so I hope Fran's watching, and I just want to mention her. I hope it's all right that I mention her and give her some love and some encouragement. So Fran, warm and woolly hugs to you. And I'm having fun participating in your make-along. So I think that's about all I have to say about that. I'll go ahead and put this on at the beginning and put the clip next about the yarn that I'm spinning for the sweater, and I'll talk more about other projects that I'm working on in part 2 of this carryover episode, the first episode of 2020 for the My Wool Mitten podcast. I hope that you all are well. Oh, and because probably people will ask, I'm wearing my Mitten sweater. Behind me on the chair is a shawl that my daughter made for me out of yarn from our own sheep, full of cables and lace that I love. And here we are getting our first significant snowfall in Michigan, and here it is, the middle of January. I think today is the 17th, but I could be wrong about that. So I hope that you have enjoyed this. I hope that you are doing some making and stashing down, or if you're not stashing down, maybe you're acquiring stash. And I hope you're having a lovely January. I'll talk to you again real soon. Bye-bye. Well, good gloriously sunny afternoon to you all. Can you believe that there's only 2 weeks left until Christmas? I can't. It really doesn't seem like winter's even here. We've had a little bit of snow and just a little bit of cold weather, but we're just rushing towards the end of the year, aren't we? I'm not going to put out a podcast until January. I told you that after the last episode. But I started a project, and I thought I want to document it, and I'm going to document it on film, and maybe put it up as an episode in January. If it works. Maybe even if it doesn't, I might show you bits of it. But do you remember me reading to you from the December chapter of the Knitter's Almanac? Well, the pattern for that month is a sweater, and it's called the Hurry Up Last Minute Sweater. And I've always wanted to make it. I had a couple of friends who made it, and it's surprisingly comfortable. I had tried it on, and I also liked the fit. And I have the other sweater on the needles that I'm working on, but I thought, excuse me, one of the things I'm trying to do, and if I were to zoom the camera around and show you, I'm going through and rehoming some yarn and fibers that I'm never going to get to, and trying to consolidate a little bit and downsize a little bit. But I am wanting to spin up some fibers that I've had for a while that mean a lot to me and make them into something useful. So this is some fiber that I wanted to spin. I don't have a lot of. I always wanted to make kind of a chunky sweater out of it, and so I thought, this is going to be the time. So let me tell you a little bit about that. Do you remember in one of my vlogs when I was walking in the woods, I was wearing this shawl that I spun from some roving from our farm, and I told you that it had the milkweed fiber in it that my grandson had picked from the field. And so this is that same fiber. We called it Midnight Dances at the time. And let me see. Oh, like right here, there's a little bit of the milkweed that will get spun in. And this was from a ram lamb that we had named Eli, a black Cordell ram lamb. And we used him one season, and then I don't even remember why. I decided not to keep him over, foolishly. My favorite little ewe, Francie, is a daughter of his, and he had a charcoal gray, almost black fleece that was really, really fine. I think if I remember, his conformation looked a little suspect to me, like, I didn't doubt the breeder, but he looked more Rambouillet than Cordell. Had a long neck and that little top knot, but he sure did make some nice fleece. So anyway, I digress. That's what the roving is. And I did start to spin a little sample when I got this idea of documenting it. And so let me pause for a minute and I will tell you a little bit about that. Maybe first of all, I should read to you what Elizabeth wrote about this sweater, sometimes called the wishbone sweater. She says, "Do you ever have hanging over you something that you well intended to make, but which you never got around to starting? You do? A sweater? Well, so do I. Embarking on a sweater at this late date smacks of madness, but it can be done, and done without using up too much of your precious December time. The main thing is to make it very thick. The thicker the knitting, the fewer the stitches. The fewer the stitches, the sooner finished, right? Not finished as soon as mathematics would tell you. Your fingers are not quite as agile with thick wool as with thin, but still finished with surprising speed." So I'm going to be spinning this on my Louette wheel, spinning it very thick, thicker than you even would think should be done. I mentioned that I did start, I spun 2 1-ounce balls of the roving, which when plied together filled the Louette bobbin and gave me 50 yards of 2-ply yarn. Now, Elizabeth suggests starting out with like a 10 and a half needle, and that was a little bit tight for me, and my gauge was off a little bit. I went up to 11, and I liked the fabric, and I got gauge exactly. So that made me very happy. Not just stitch gauge, but row gauge. And so that 50 yards of yarn gave me 10 inches of sleeve. So that tells me what I needed to know, and it tells me that I could go on from there. So that's what I'm going to be spinning, and I'm going to document how long it takes me to spin that up. If I'm figuring right from her calculations, I should need about 650 yards to make the sweater for myself. And what I may do is cast it on just before the sleeves are joined into the yoke and work my way up to see how I like the fit, and then I can knit down. I should have more than enough yarn. I think I've got about 2 pounds of the fiber, but we'll see. So I hope I can take you along on this journey. I'm filming with my new camera, or my new phone. The camera on it is supposed to work better in difficult light situations, so we'll see if that's true. And if you've followed me for very long, you've heard about the ugly orange carpet, and you can see it peeking out from under the rug there. So you will see some of that. I'm wearing the sleeves of my other sweater just to be sure that they are what I want, and I am pretty happy with them. And then let me come over here and show you 2 gifts that I got. This little sewing basket my stepdaughter found for me, and isn't it adorable? Not only is the mustard yellow color perfect, but the spinning logo's on it. And then my dear friend Mary just brought me this. And so far, the ferns are doing okay. Might be a little cold over here. I put them in the shower every Monday and give them a good soaking with a lot of moisture in the air and let them set. So we'll see how they do. I've got a little bit more of the thin fleeced card, and then I'll be ready to spin that too. So I think that's all I'm going to do for today, and I'll get set up and try to take you along when I sit down to do some more spinning, and we can chat while I spin. It doesn't take long at all to fill a bobbin with half an ounce or with an ounce of really thick yarn. So I'll see you back here when I'm ready to spin. Well, I told you that I was going to film a little bit with the camera trained on the spinning wheel. The filming that I did to begin with just showed me. And I thought, it's nice and quiet. It's actually New Year's Day. And I'm going to try to finish this bobbin. And so we'll film a little bit and see how that turns out. In the background, you can see what passes as our Christmas tree this year. It looks like it's just going to be a nice quiet day for us today. I have some treats for Bill and I for later. It's extremely warm out for this time of year in Michigan, but it almost feels like it could rain. Need a little bit more take up here to keep this feeding on quickly. There we go, I think. Nope, needs a little more. There we go, I think. Let's try that. My original thought was that I would have everything spun and ready to cast on the solstice. That didn't happen, but no stress. So I'm just going to keep spinning, and possibly this will be a New Year's Eve cast on, or New Year's Day. We'll see. I've been sorting through some fibers. I think I may have mentioned to you last time or earlier as well that I've been giving away and donating some yarns that I'm not going to use. And I think for the new year, I don't make those plans like the make 9 or those kind of things, because that's just setting myself up for failure. And I change my mind about what I want to do too often. But one thing I think I do want to do, I thought I might organize for myself in 2020, is I have some smaller amounts of fiber that I'd like to spin up. And so I think I'm going to kind of put those together. And I'm going to make a plan that each month I have several small bits of fiber, and then I have a couple of pounds of larger bits of fiber that are all processed and ready to spin. So I'm thinking that if I set myself a goal of continually spinning throughout the month on the larger quantities, and then at least once a month spinning up the smaller quantities, and maybe work my way through that fiber stash in the year. I haven't completely formulated that idea, and I want to sort it out too, and then I'll either include that in this video or in one at another time. What do you guys think about that idea? Well, I don't know. This is still not feeding on. I have it on the largest whirl. That's pretty good and tight. All right. Let's see how this goes. There's a good pull. Want this to be pretty bulky. I have a ham in the oven roasting. And that'll be nice because then we can just pick at it. And here in a couple of hours I'll put together a breakfast casserole. That's kind of our family's tradition for Christmas Day. This was a section of the roving. There's quite a lot of the blue, turquoise, teal. I guess it's more of a teal blue. And that doesn't draft very well. It kind of makes clumps. And that's okay. But I have to give it a little bit of a tug to draft it, and then it takes off, and then I get too fine of a yarn. So, but it balances out pretty well between the two bobbins for some reason. There we go. Just needed to get my hands up out of my lap a little bit, I guess. And maybe you can see that a little better too. There, it's going pretty good. We're almost done. Okay, we're coming to the end of this ounce. And here's a little tip for spinning. You may have heard this before, or you may have thought of it yourself. It's kind of common sense. I used to always spin, try to spin from one end to the other. But no matter what, I always would just spin right up to the last little piece. And then sometimes you lose that end of your yarn. And boy, can that be a bugger to try to straighten out. So now I always leave a little bit unspun so that I don't lose that tail. Now this bobbin will rest while I ply the other one, or spin the other one, and then they'll be plied together. So let's see how this looks.